So Whisper in the Walls came out. It was pretty good, I think. I don't know, really, I skipped all the cutscenes. Something about a guy killing his boss and then getting put in a coma for it. Speaking of bosses, I broke the first one, killed the fragmented one. But I'm still stuck on the Bond mod, so we're just gonna pretend that didn't happen. I wanted to do some testing with Khora in the new Bond mod, since she can effectively have 2 companions on at once. I was hoping there'd be some unique synergies in there I could maybe find. So first we'll categorise the Bond mods. Aerial Bond reduces companion recovery time on kills while airborne, but also produces a 10-meter cold field around your companions while you're in the air. This AoE field will also proc primary frostbite. As a side note, when Titania's in a pixie form, Aerial Bond's cold field won't appear since it despawns the companion, but you can still get the buff to recovery time. Astral Bond gives your companion void damage on operator attack. Then if your companion attacks with that void damage, you get amp efficiency, which then allows you to attack, giving your companion void damage, which then, when the companion attacks, gives you amp efficiency, which then allows... Contagious Bond is just a compressed and universal version of the mecha set. Enemies killed by your companion will spread any status effects on them in a 9-meter radius. Covert Bond gives your companion 10 seconds of uninterruptible stealth, stacking up to 60 seconds for every finisher or mercy kill you do. Duplex Bond will clone your companion up to 3 times for every 100 energy you expend. Clones live up to 30 seconds and have a 50% chance of dropping an energy or 1 kill. Unfortunately though, Duplex Bond has been disabled on Venari. Manifold Bond only works on robotic type companions, so it only works on Sentinels, Moas and Hounds. This makes all the companions' precept mods apply the statuses that are on their weapons. Also getting a kill on enemy with more than 3 stats effects on it will reduce their cooldown by 3 seconds. Momentous Bond gives your companion an elemental damage buff for 30 seconds every time you kill an Eximus unit. If they're downed, it reduces their recovery time by 18 seconds. Mystic Bond makes it so every 5 companion abilities you use with a cooldown, you'll get a free Warframe ability. Venari doesn't have any cooldown based abilities though, so this doesn't work on her. Reinforced Bond gives you an extra 60% firing rate if you have over 1200 shields on a companion. Reloading also restores 150 overshields to your companion, but Venari doesn't have any shields, so it doesn't work on her. Restorative Bond is arcane pulse for Sentinels. Unfortunately, the buff to health orbs only applies to your companion, so it's good if you can produce a lot of health orbs, but otherwise isn't really that worth it. Seismic Bond makes companion melee attacks do a 4-meter shockwave while you've got a channeled ability active. Those shockwaves will also increase your ability efficiency by up to 30% for 12 seconds. Since Khora doesn't have any channeled abilities on at base, we can Helmet Thong Gloom in order to activate the effects. Now before we continue, I'd like to make a statement.
Shut the fuck up.
This is the only time you'll ever see me recommend Gloom. It's on the short list of the things I don't fuck with, but it's the only channelable Helminth ability, so it has to go on for the use of Seismic Bond. Tandem Bond is restricted to beasts, and every time they land a melee hit, it'll increase your melee combo counter by 6. Heavy attacks then convert your melee combo counter into a multiplier for your companion's damage. Tenacious Bond reduces companion recovery time for every headshot, but increases your final critical damage modifier if your companion has over 50% critical chance. Vicious Bond causes companion melee to strip armor, and if that enemy's been recently attacked by an ability, it'll also become contagious and spread to other enemies nearby. Khora has 2 issues with the Bond mods. Number 1, the Bond mods don't stack, so passive buffs like Tenacious Bond won't apply twice if you use them on both your companion and Venari. Secondly, Venari has 2 types of attack, an ability attack and a passive attack. Mods that augment what her attack does, such as Vicious Bond, only apply to a passive attack, but mods that affect damage apply to all attacks. With all that being said, here's a list of the Bond mods that work on Khora.
Ooh, that's kind of small.
It's not very long, and needless to say I'm disappointed, so we're going to have to do something creative. Since the Bond mods ended up being quite restrictive, I instead went for a build that promoted synergy between Venari and Khora, where Khora and Venari were healing and buffing each other. I used Vicious Bond still, since Armor Strip's always good, and Astral Bond, since Void Damage is really good at taking out Overguard, and that's going to be Venari's main struggle. As far as Khora goes, the only strange parts about her build are Arc on Intensify, whose buff can be activated by Venari's heal, and Venari Bodyguard. Since this is now a double suicide pact, Venari should be a little bit more forthcoming about doing her side of the job. This is a technique I learned from my boss, and can be used in most workplace environments. The only downside to this is restorative mods don't affect Venari Bodyguard's recovery time. The final additions are built purely around buffing Venari. So I've got Shepherd on in order to increase her health and armor, with Coaction Drift in order to buff it even further, Arcane Bodyguard, which will allow me to heal Venari over time with melee kills, and then I've got... What the fuck is that? I've got to use a kit gun with it. Why are the rings so small? This does not feel like a 20% chance. I mean, I guess I'm doing decent damage now. Wait, all the stacks go at once? That's bullshit. Look, I'm gonna be real with you. This build costs an arm and a leg, is way too complicated, and fucking sucks. My original plan for this video was to use Khora as a framing device, since she could effectively have 2 companions on at once to find some weird synergies with the Bond mods. However, after doing all of my testing, Khora just kinda sucks. Her 1 has poor damage accumulation, her 2 and her 4 are CC options, which are done better by other frames, and her 3 is probably going to be completely annihilated by the companion rework part 2. Khora's just here so I can pull another sneaky and talk about companions again. I went through every companion to find out if the Bond mods had any good interactions. I'm going to start with the basic stuff and slowly work my way up to stronger and stronger things. First of all, we've got Tenacious Bond, Cat Eyes, and the Ardaza Cavat. Since the Ardaza Cavat is based around giving you a crit chance buff anyway, buffing a crit damage as well is only going to benefit you. Next we have the return of the Panzer Maggot Cat. Since Viral Quills casts every 5 seconds on a recovery cooldown, you can combine this with Mystic Bond in order to get a free ability cast every 25 5 seconds, taking him straight back out the trash. Next up, we've got a Hound that's specifically designed to break overguard. Using Null Audit, since he can strip 50% overguard, and Momentous Bond, since he gives a damage buff when an Xmas unit is killed, and then using Astral Bond for the void damage buff. The build starts to get strange when you use Manifold Bond. Manifold Bond's ability to apply elements to Precept affects Null Audit, so if your Hound captures an Xmas ability, such as a Leech Xmas, it can create AoEs that apply status procs incredibly quickly. I find this setup's useful on Warframes that need to use CC to open up to their damage. For instance, I use it on Vauban, since I could do this, and this. This Hound is really useful to Vauban, since it'll break Xmas Overguard, allowing them to be pulled into his Vortex. And since Vauban's Vortex can easily open enemies to ground finishers, I tend to equip Pack Leader and Covert Bond. Pack Leader giving him an extra layer of protection, and Covert Bond making him invisible. Duplex Bond is also a fantastic pick if you're using this with Vauban, since he cuts through a lot of energy, and having more Hounds out means they're more likely to break someone's Overguard rather than attacking a random enemy. Honestly, running this setup with Vauban makes any endless mission so easy, I might as well use a macro. Next we've got Diversified Denial with Duplex Bond. Diversified Denial allows you to split your Hound into 3 smaller Hounds, and then Duplex Bond allows you to summon 3 clones of that Hound, meaning you can have 6 of a companion on at once. Then combine that with Khora and you can have 7 with Venari as well. This isn't very powerful, but it allows a Bombard to go through the typical London experience. If you like the idea of Diversified Denial but want it to actually be good, I suggest going with a Moa, using Duplex Bond, Hard Engage, Vicious Bond, and Contagious Bond. I find that Hounds and Kubras attack quite slowly, but Moas with Hard Engage attack multiple times very quickly, and as such it works a lot better with Vicious Bond. Hard Engage also has really good status chance, which can be affected by the mods on your weapon, so you can use this with Contagious Bond in order to make a status nuke. I also use Duplex Bond because it's really funny to watch these guys jump someone. Since this setup focuses on damage, Ethereum Infection works really well, especially with Duplex Bond because it buffs your Spectres as well as your companions. This also works really well on Helios since the Deconstructor is considered a melee weapon. Moas also have another little trick they can do with Blast Shields and Reinforced Bond. Blast Shields resets your Moa shields to maximum on impact and also increases their maximum over shields by 3000. And since Reinforced Bond activates when your companion has over 1200 shields and it goes off so often, it means you'll permanently have that 60% fire rate buff. I was also hoping to do something with Contagious Bond on the Helminth Charger too, using the Strain set. But unfortunately, the Strain set's terrible. Since the maggots are considered spectres, none of the bond mods apply to them, so you can't buff them in any way. If you want an infested dog that's actually good, then use the Medjay Predacite with Paralytic Spores. Paralytic Spores opens enemies to finishers in a 16 meter radius every 10 seconds. Now you can use this in your usual finisher build kind of way by using Arcane Trickery for invisibility or Arcane Ultimatum for free armor. You can then use Covert Bond for free invisibility on your companion to evade damage, but it means you've got to wait every 10 seconds for that cooldown on Paralytic Spores before you can get any openings. So to take full advantage of these openings, I like to use the Inner Dem. 3 of the Inner Dem's evolutions play into finishers, with the 3rd evolution increasing your finisher damage by 60% and the 4th evolution increasing your combo by 10 per finisher. The 5th evolution's where it gets interesting though, as it stuns aware enemies in a 10 meter radius on finisher. This stun, however, will also open enemies to finishers, meaning if you can get an opening using Paralytic Spores from the Medjay Predacite, you can then chain together finishers by using the Inner Dem and kill an entire room quite easily. And as a final finisher buff, using the Incarnate form of the Inner Dem on a finisher attack gives you a 10% damage resistance that stacks up to 4 times. Because of the way that armor drops off exponentially, it may not even be worth using Arcane Ultimatum and instead relying on this. None of the Inner Dem's abilities require a kill either, you just need to perform the finisher, so it's very easy to build up stacks of resistance or provide stuns. And since Inner Dem finisher attacks land in 2 hits anyway, you'll be getting 20 combo per finisher, so you only need to land 4 finishers to go to your Incarnon form. I personally like this setup because it makes Inaros even more irrelevant even though it only uses a butter knife and a sick dog, but given the way it can change your playstyle, it turns it from less of a companion into more of an augment. I suppose you could also use the Zakti to open finishers, but it's banned by the Geneva Convention as a chemical weapon. Speaking of war crimes, let me show you how with 5 mods we could turn the Diriga into a balloon so lethal it puts the Hindenburg to shame. This happens because of a combination of Manifold Bond and Arc Coil. Arc Coil will strike 7 enemies in a 10 meter radius every 3 seconds, with a 10% chance of an electric proc. Combining this with Manifold Bonds means you get the elements of your companion weapon as well. In order to make sure Diriga prioritizes Arc Coil, make sure you don't equip any attack mods like Assault Mode. Next, go with an IPS weapon. You get 3 extra elements for free. Since there's now the Radiation Dual Stat mod, if you use Magnetic or Gas or Blast and Corrosive, get the electric proc off Diriga and then have 2 elements on your melee, you can have up to 9 elements priming at once. This means a properly combined Diriga and melee weapon can get up to a 720% damage increase off Condition Overload. And since all these enemies are proc with more than 3 elements, killing them will activate Manifold Bond's Precept Reset. As long as you kill a few of the enemies that Diriga's attacked, you should be able to reset Arc Oil and have it going off every second. This then pairs with Mystic Bond so you get a free ability cast every 5 seconds. and Vulpafile gets thrown back in the trash. I'm sorry, it's so shit. I'll go for blasting corrosive or magnetic and gas depending on what I'm going up against. Corrosive stripped armor. Blast does nothing because it's a terrible element, but while I'm on the topic of blasting because I want to talk about it, Facing Retaliation on Chroma should be able to proc blast shards on health damage, but can't. If this was fixed, I feel like it would bring Chroma into pre-blast shard nerf territory of powerful. Magnetic's nice because if you're using it with a melee build, you can take advantage of melee vortex without having to put a magnet on the side of your computer. Enemies just need to have a magnetic proc for melee vortex to kick in, so you'll be sucking people off pretty consistently. Gas makes every enemy zapped by Diriga have a 3 meter AoE, which isn't useful by itself until you start using synth deconstruct with it. That 25% chance on 7 enemies means you have a 175% chance of a health orb. Combine that with the AoE of gas and you're almost guaranteed to have a pair of balls to grab when you're desperate. We can use this with Equilibrium to get 65 energy for every health orb we pick up. Or for a less intrusive method, we can use a Violet Archon shard, which will give you 10 or 15 depending if it's Tau Forged. You wouldn't think this would fill you up, but considering you're likely to have a free ability cast in stock most of the time anyway, this constant intake of balls should keep you satisfied, which also proves you take more after your mother. Overall, this Diriga build will provide you free abilities, consistent health and energy, and an AoE status primal with 7 elements. And finally, just for survivability, we'll throw a Restorative Bond on there as well. The Restorative Bond health buff is really good, since one of Diriga's main exports is health orbs, and in the event Diriga does go down, any stockpiled health orbs can be used to resurrect him. But with these 5 mods and some funky purple crystals, you can turn Diriga into a very powerful support for any close range build. And that's everything I've managed to find. If you found something that I've missed, then let me know in the comments. I'd love to see it. I'm going to take a little bit of a break before I start working on the next video to finish another project. But when I do start working on it, it's either going to be Wukong, Gara or Trinity, or potentially something else if something interesting comes up. Anyway, have a good one.